The penultimate day in stage 7 of the Amgen Tour of California was all about mountains, and the road between Ontario and the top of Mount Baldy saw an immediate attack by last year's defending champion Chris Horner, second in the picture here. He went from the gun to try and find a way of getting back his 2 minutes 50 seconds he'd lost thus far.
Yes, he started the day in 26th place overall. It was a very impressive move by Radio Shack Nissan Trek because they put 4 riders in their original move of 17, but it got whittled down at the end to 11.
And as the big riders who are in the high up overall, including Dave Zabriskie in the yellow jersey, got onto the slopes of Mount Baldy, the breakaway was beginning to split up. This is Mark DeMar, who was slipping off the back of the leading group, and very soon from those original 17 there would only be 2 riders left, Chris Horner and John Atapuma at the front. The peloton were coming as everybody else was being swept up.
Yes, Jens Voigt here on the left-hand side. He knew he'd laid down the foundations for what was going to be a massive battle at the summit of Mount Baldy, but before they got there, they had to get to the summit of Glendore Mountain Ridge Road, and they still had an advantage of 3 minutes and 8 seconds.
That's right. First over the top was the Colombian Atapuma, followed by Chris Horner. There was still a chance that we'd get to the finish. By this stage now, though, it was quite clear that Chris Horner was not going to win the Tour of Amgen Tour of California, because his gap was now heading down to the vital margin. It was now only 1:30. All he could hope for now would be to win the stage on top of Mount Baldy.
Yes, there was a lot of pressure on the front end of the main field. Initially, most of the pacemaking had been actually done by Garmin Barracuda, but they seemed to weaken a fraction, and going forward, BMC Racing then took up the responsibility. The overall leader at the start of the day, Dave Zabriskie, continued to ride near the front of the pack, and then as we got to 5 kilometers to go, it was the men in orange from Holland and Rabobank who started to set the pace.
And while riders started to go off the back under the impetus of the pressure being applied by the Rabobank rider Luis Leon Sanchez and the youngster Wilco Kelderman, it was the rider third in the picture here, Robert Gessing, who was planning to win this race. Chris Horner now was having trouble containing the constant attacks coming from the Colombian John Atapuma, until, as the road continued up, he could do no more. He lost contact, and then came the attack by Robert Gessing. He thanked his 2 teammates. Now was the big test. Could he get enough time to win the race?
Well, they put the danger onto the shoulders of Dave Zabriskie, and he was dropped off the back end of the main field, soloing up to the finish line, trying to limit his losses. But Robert Hessink was doing the ride of his life, the comeback from a very nasty leg break when he was knocked off his bike in training last year in September.
Initially, Hessink was joined by Tom Danielson. TJ Van Garderen, who was expected to be leading the attacks on the climb, was acting on the defensive. Then Gessing got the sights of Chris Horner. That inspired him to kick again.
Yes, he slowly but surely was picking up the remnants of the breakaways, and one by one he caught them, including Chris Horner. Now there was only one man left for him to catch, the amazing young Colombian climber, 24-year-old John Atapuma.
Atapuma was getting onto the steepest slopes now as the kilometers were closing down on this race. Chris Horner, Tom Danielson and the youngster Joe Dabrowski had teamed up together in the chase, but they couldn't control now. They were joined there by Fabio Duarte as well. Now, Gessing was closing in on the last man surviving of that original 17-man break. It was almost being reenacted in slow motion, but Gessing was winning the battle. So
the 2 men joined together, and they looked down at 1 kilometer to go, and as they came round the final bend, at this point, Robert Hessing almost overcooked it.
It took him far too wide, but he managed to correct it, and it was only 50 meters to the line, and so he got the stage win, and he also got the leader's yellow jersey.
But to second and third place on the stage, first of all, would go to John Atapuma, and his teammate Fabio Duarte made it a good day out for Colombia Col Deportes because he took third.
So second and third for Colombia, and the new up-and-coming rising star of the United States, Joe Dombrowski, finishing in 4th place. Tommy Danielson coming home in 5th place, and the hero of the day, about to come round that corner, Chris Horner. He will cross the line next. But for the yellow jersey of Dave Zabriskie, he has finished 3 times second overall in this race. There was no yellow jersey for him waiting at the summit either. And same said for TJ Van Garderen, who finished just ahead of Zabriskie. 2 surprises this, as Van Garderen looks back and sees the erstwhile maillot jaune cross the line.
So with Robert Hessing getting himself the victory, it was a double header for Team Rabobank, because as he heads now the overall lead, TJ Van Garderen looks back to see how much time he'd lost and how close to his finish was the man who started the day in the yellow jersey, Dave Zabriskie.
So overall, Zabriskie's back in a familiar second place here, 46 seconds off. Danielson is third. Tomorrow it's downtown LA for the big finale. We'll see you there.